Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Coaching Conversations. I would like to welcome my guest this week, and my guest is Morton Patterson. Hello Morton.
Hi Amantha, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, honestly, the pleasure's all mine. We've had such a giggle before we pressed record here, which we'll share with the viewers shortly. But let me introduce you properly and professionally, because you are someone who I have followed on LinkedIn. I've been always amazed by the quality of your posts. You write so brilliantly and so creatively and passionately, I have to say. And you're a wonderful executive coach. You help people to understand, because lots of people do struggle to understand how they can create that value in the businesses that they have. And when I've looked at you and what you're all about, it comes down to three things, really. It's all about helping people to understand that important piece around self-esteem, around pricing. And the thing that's linked to pricing is being able to articulate your value. And I think for lots of people, that's the bit that they struggle with. So you are in such high demand. I know that people are always coming and asking you for your services. And so today's an opportunity for our viewers to get to know you a little bit better. So is that okay to get going so that they can do that?
Absolutely.
So you describe yourself as an executive coach. How did you get into that?
I think I'd say I got into it by accident, because initially I was running another business and decided I wanted to improve my communication skills. And people often say, "You communication skills?" Yeah. And so I went and I joined my first coaching training course, which was an NLP practitioner course, which I did. And I got into it by accident because I will say this. At the end of the session, right, someone was leaving and she says to me, "You have a wonderful way with people." And I said, "Okay, thank you." Like that. And then, the other student says, "Yes, you do." And they said, "You have a great way of asking questions." And then I decided to look into coaching more. And from then, after doing that, I then knew I had an interest in learning, and I had an interest in just really asking questions. And that's how I get into executive coaching, through my work as a trainer and a facilitator, and it just evolved into that. It just helped me. Plus, on top of that, through my reading, I was always interested in behavioral coaching. It wasn't just about, I'd call it technical coaching, which is about the business aspect. It was around why people do what they do. And my executive coaching is really around the soft personal elements that drives people, which is really the thing that's the most important thing, which is how come my whole work around knowing your value started, because I wanted to help people to understand their value. And that's how I got into executive coaching, if that makes sense. Yeah,
completely. And that, I mean, everything you just said there is that's like my world. Values are so powerful and so important, aren't they? And we were just talking, weren't we, a bit before? We'll share with the viewers. We've been laughing about our Zoom setup, and we were just learning from each other, weren't we? Top tips about what to do, because I think coaches are that breed of people. It's like, give me more information. And
I want to learn.
And that's so fantastic. And I think that really describes you, doesn't it? Because even then, before we went online, you came up with a book, and you said, "This book epitomizes me." What's the book? Show people.
Can you see it?
Decisive
by Chip and Dan Heath. They wrote a fantastic book called Switch. Oh, love it. Because I love books. Yeah. But I'm reading this one now, Decisive. And that's probably part of my coaching, because that tells you about how to make decisions. And I help clients to make better decisions. I also help them to work through the decisions they're making. But as a coach, and as an executive coach, I have to constantly learn new ways of helping them. So my passion really is around learning what's new, learning for myself, and then taking that and sharing it with them. So from this, I'll be writing a couple of articles because of what I've learned, and they're actually one of my favorite authors, Chip and Dan Heath. Great book.
And that's fantastic. And you said, you said to me before, that's what really sort of motivates you. It's that learning and sharing, and your posts really do draw people in. I mean, it's not one of those just browse across the top. You literally are hooked all the way through, because you're giving us something. And that's so powerful. So when did you first become aware of your own values? Obviously, you understand the values and the importance of them in business for other people. When did you become first aware of your own values, Morton?
Good question. And I think it's whether we're talking about my personal values because my values have grown with, or we're talking about values in a sense of the difference that I make. Okay, so I'll say today, I'm a successful business consultant, but it wasn't always that way. So it wasn't always that way because I used to do a lot of the things that I'm helping clients with, which is I didn't value myself, I didn't value the work I was doing, I didn't recognize it. And through that journey, I started to recognize that I wasn't looking at the work I was doing. I wasn't charging the right thing or charging the right amount. I was undercharging terribly. And I didn't value the relationship with the client or the important role that I played. Now, the personal values of education, money, empathy, all of those stuff is what I've grown with. So those are different, I think, in terms of our life values. But the knowing your value stuff is around how you value you. And I've been on this journey, I think, for the last, I'd say at least 10 years. When I learned that I didn't value myself, then when I'm working with clients, I recognize that they didn't value themselves either. So therefore, I created the Know Your Value program. So I'd say over the past 10 years, I've learned it, and I'm still learning more about it.
And that's really a really fantastic point, isn't it? Because when we don't value ourselves, that shows up in our behavior, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? It tips into absolutely everything. And the opposite of that is true. When you know your values, my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. You have the power to stand in your own power, so to speak. And what I mean by that is you will go, as I have done, and probably you have done, to a client, and you're clear about how you could help them. You're clear about what you want to charge them. You're clear about the relationships. You're clear about the boundaries you're prepared to set with them because you value you and you value yourself and you value the relationship that you're developing. It's critical. So when you have strong sense of value and self-esteem, you can push back on a client and challenge them without feeling, oh, I can't really ask them that kind of a question. Because you have the confidence, because you have the self-esteem, you can do so. And I think that's a very, very important part of valuing the work that you do, valuing your professionalism, if that makes sense.
Completely. I'm on the same page. Absolutely. So you've said that so brilliantly. So tell me, what sort of business problems do you solve for people then? What might that look like so the viewer might understand?
Let me give you an example of a stress tester. And he's a consultant, let's just say, stress tester, who is a consultant who goes out and helps clients to improve their products and their services. But they call him in to test it, to give it the rigor test, okay? So, for example, he went to a client, educational institution, and they said, can you come in and see us? Because we're about to launch this product. And we are not sure if it's going to work. So he went in, did it, and then realized that not only was he helping them to understand about the weaknesses of the product, but he was also able to see what other things that they could do. What's the problem I helped him with? He didn't actually realize the value of that intervention. So the problems I help people with is really not recognizing they go in and they do a job, but they don't actually understand the impact of the difference that they make. That's one of the key things I help people. So when you don't recognize the impact, one of the things is you have the battle with pricing. I don't think the client is going to accept it. So they undercharge because they're desperate to get the work. They're afraid the client will say no. So another one of the problems is, I didn't actually realize that we made such a difference. I didn't actually realize that we should have charged more. Or I know I wanted to, but I didn't have the courage to charge more. So I didn't actually realize that we could offer more than we're currently offering and have a completely different conversation. So I help them to look at the questions they should ask because they have a greater sense of confidence, how they can present their services because they've now learned how to package it, how they can put their proposal together with confidence and knowing why the client should ask would work with them. So I help them to get really clear on what they're offering. I help them to put a package together, and those are the problems that they have. I also, most importantly, help them to understand the impact of the value of the work they're doing, the value of the difference that they make. That's the problem.
And that's so powerful, isn't it? Because people's confidence goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And like you say, that, you know, that it's that difference that they're making.
Yeah.
To the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't measure that enough.
No, and that's so true. We really, really don't. So in a couple of sentences, if you were in an elevator pitch and you had someone who really had no idea what values were about, what would you say values give people?
Courage, confidence. And I would say I help people to sell on value and not on price, and to understand the impact of the difference that they make. That's what I do. To understand the impact of the difference that they make. Understand the impact of the difference that you make, Amantha, or anyone else who's another coach or consultant or whatever. Yeah? People don't understand that. So ensure I help them to understand their value, to sell their services based on value and not price.
Brilliant. Nailed it. So given that you have had this very strong sense of values, and obviously we both do NLP, and the power of that is immense really in those conversations, what's the best bit of advice you ever had that either complemented that message or just, you know, had some impact on you in your life? What's the best bit of advice you've ever had?
Years ago, when I was working at Ernst & Young, and I'm in the lift with my manager, and true story, I'm in the lift with my manager and we just come out of a meeting. He may even see this video. We just come out of a meeting and he said, "Mo, how did you think the meeting went?" And I said, it went okay. I said, there were a couple of questions that I should have asked. And he said to me, the best bit of advice that I've kept since then: the only silly question is the one you never ask. So I've retained that forever, because so many times you don't want to ask the question because you think it's silly, it may make you look silly, or you're afraid or whatever. The only silly question is the one you never ask.
I'm going to put that in my great ideas box when we finish, because that is so true actually, because that's the one that will keep you awake at night, isn't it? Yeah. That you just go, oh God, I didn't ask that question. What difference would it have made if I'd asked that question?
Yeah, and it never hurts to ask it. The only silly question is the one you never asked.
Yeah, no, I'm taking that one, definitely. So you've had a lot of experience in coaching and the world of coaching. You must have come across a lot of misconceptions, maybe things that have irritated you or annoyed you. We've only got time for one.
Oh, we need a separate session just for that.
Yeah, sure, no problem. You and every other guest that's ever done this. We can have a coaching moan, not coaching conversation. So what would be the coaching or development myth, I suppose, that you would want to challenge, debunk, set the record straight on? What would it be?
To believe that the moment you come out of a coaching school, you're a coach. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Many people go, as I did years ago when I learned NLP, you're not an NLPer. It's like you've just learned to drive a car. You're not a driver yet. So you're not a coach having done something for a weekend or 5 months or whatever. You've learned the methods. You've learned the tools, but you are not a coach. You're learning how to coach. So that's the thing that is, if I had a pebble in my shoe that just bugs me, it's...
Good analogy.
Yeah.
So annoying.
Yeah, it is that I'd love to debunk, the feeling that, and I probably was like that when I first trained, to think that I had the coaching skills and I didn't. You need to learn patience. You need to learn how to pace. You need to learn how to ask the right questions at the right time. You need to learn how to shut up. You don't learn that just the moment you've come out of school and you've learned the different modules. You just don't. So that's the method.
I love that. I'd agree. And I think that comes back to everything that you're about, though, isn't it? You know, if we think we've just gained all the answers in a weekend course, actually we're not creating the value, are we? We're not recognizing that. And I think one of the things I learned, in hindsight, is that power of the pause. You know, you don't need to be doing all the talking. It's quite nice to shut up sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But and so that's really, really insightful. I do love that, because we've had many guests have come at that question in different ways. But I think something that unifies all guests is that you're not a driver just because you got your, you know, your driving certificate. I think that's so powerful, Morton. I love that. There's so many gems here. So tell the viewers a little bit more about you when we use the bit of role play around a dinner party. Do you like dinner parties?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
me too.
Glass of wine for good food. I'm good to go.
Oh yeah, lovely. Oh yeah, right. Well, that's another whole conversation in its own. So tell me, which three people do you most admire or would like to have time with? They can be dead, alive, anyone who you would just like to be in the company of. Musicians, even. Some people have even talked about music.
Really?
Yeah. Who would you like to be in the company of, and why?
My dad.
Oh.
Because he died many years ago, but he was a brilliant man. And he came to England, I think in the early 60s, to become a barrister. And to survive that and to be a barrister during that time, I think required a certain degree of resilience. Okay. I'd love to have him around the table to say, how did you manage that? What did you do? And how did you keep going, etc., etc. The other person I've been thinking about will be Bill Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think he's really interesting. And I'd love to understand if I had a personal way to say, well, Bill, how did you navigate some of the pressures and the ways and the attacks? And how did you keep your calm and still keep your wits about you? You know, it would be my dad, Bill Clinton. And I think the other person whom I regretted not seeing in concert is Ray Charles.
Okay.
Yeah, because I love his music and I think what he achieved was amazing. You know, so it would be great to just be able to sit and say, well, tell me more about that. That I think would be, you know, there's a list. There's, you know, there's Ray Charles, there's Stevie, there's a weird one actually. There's Van Morrison, but you know, it goes on and on. But
great lineup for music.
Yeah, I love music.
Yeah, and that's so powerful, isn't it? I've just finished. I mean, what a weekend to be finishing Michelle Obama's book. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I read that as well.
And you know, she talks about the optics. Do you remember that? The optics, about how you're under constant scrutiny as the president, and Flotterson, Potters, or whatever they call themselves, president of the United States. You know, yeah, it's just phenomenal, the observational scrutiny that you're under and the pressure. And I wonder how many folk would deal with that.
Yeah.
You know, it must be so difficult. Yeah. And you know, to have your mistakes so public.
Yeah. Magnified, scrutinized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and analyzed.
How would any of us deal with that? I have no idea. But those are fantastic guests. What would you have for dinner, by the way? Extra question, just asking. Oof. What would you have served? What would be your ideal dinner?
Something simple.
Something simple, with fine wines.
Something simple. Maybe some. Actually, I was in Cyprus at the weekend and we had some lovely steak. I'd have steak for dinner, or I'd have some sea bream fish with yes.
Need to bring you back, Morton. You've gone off into food heaven.
we had a beautiful bottle of red, Greek wine, which is fantastic. Just allowed it to breathe, and it was fantastic. So yeah.
And you know what? Isn't that our connections? That's when we're at our best and most tuned in, isn't it? When we in that comfort and that connection with the people that we love, and we're
absolutely
we're dining,
and you're fully relaxed.
Exactly.
Fully relaxed. It was So I'd have steak.
That's yes please. Yeah, so that leads me nicely on to the next question then. So in such a busy life, but obviously in the times that we're currently living and existing through, how do you keep yourself motivated, you know?
I listen to a lot of motivational stuff and I read. at the moment I'm listening to. Don't know if you've ever heard of David Goggins.
No.
He's this
Which I'm
guy
going to
who,
write that down. David
yeah,
Goggins.
he wrote a book called "It Can't Hurt Me," right? An ex-Navy SEAL. I mean, he's extremely, he swears a lot.
Okay.
But his view of the world and the power of how much we allow our mind to get on top of us is really quite insightful. So how I do it is I journal every day.
Okay.
Yeah. And I write in my journal daily, and I walk. Can't walk at the minute because of lockdown and stuff. Yeah. So I keep myself motivated by listening to others who I find very motivational. And I journal. And I don't do as much meditation as I should, but I walk, and loads of things come. Because sometimes when I've written my post, it's from walking in the morning. I think, I'm going to write that, and then I'll do it. So my motivation comes from listening to others and reading a book that I find inspiring. You know, I've just finished reading Deep Work. I'm now reading Decisive. So I'm motivated. I'll read something like that, which I think I really like that, and I'm going to share it. So I read books, and I'd listen to some kind of motivational tape or some YouTube video, and that's what keeps me going. Yeah, as well as the desire to just get better.
That's fantastic. And what about outside of work? What do you do to just be in flow yourself and tuned into your values? Do you have any hobbies or interests?
No, that wouldn't be true. No, that wouldn't be true. That wouldn't be true. I'm growing. I sing. I'm learning to sing. So I'm actually saying that publicly. My God, yeah. So I'm not going to sing a song.
That is wonderful.
And I have found that, I mean, I've been doing it for about 3-4 years. And, you know, if I've had a heavy day and then I'm going to singing classes, this is before lockdown, I find it such a release.
Oh, gorgeous.
Afterwards to go to a singing. I mean, we've been doing it on Zoom, which is okay, but it's just not the same. Yeah. So I sing. And the other thing is that I like doing is writing. You know what I mean? So, and reading. So what I do outside of work, it's just really just either singing, and I'm not singing all the time. So, you know, I'm not walking around my house singing.
The singing coach.
Yeah. I need one, you know. Yeah, it's singing and relaxing and walking.
And do you sing in a choir, or you just want one-to-one? Yeah, no, that's good. Do you know what? I admire anyone who can sing. And the musical thing is definitely a theme that we share. Because when I do create the time, and I think it's about that, and I wanted to come back and ask you about that, about the journaling, but when I create the time to go and sit and play at the piano.
Oh, you play piano?
Yeah, badly.
Oh, okay, I'll go.
Classically, brilliantly. Modern music takes time. But I am learning, I'm going through all the Elton John songs, and I love it. And to hear that the synergy between those notes around your ears, and then to realize it's you who's playing it.
Wow.
I love it. And in fact, I've reminded myself, you know, I need to be better at that discipline. So tell me, how do you create discipline around journaling?
It became a habit. I don't know if you're quoting another book, James Clear.
I love that book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah, Atomic Habits. How I did it was I hated journaling. And I remember reading years ago, write for 10 minutes and stop. And that's what I did. And then I found I was writing for 20 minutes. And so it's become a habit that whatever's in here in the morning, I just get it out. So it's just been something that I started really small by doing, because I knew I had, well, I advised and mentored and said, you need to journal. And from looking at successful people, and that's what they're saying, I think that's what I should at least consider. And so I got into that habit just by starting really, really small. And now, and so
is it like, I mean, I imagine a bit like people, I love meditating, and I am religious with doing that.
Right.
And so it's a similar sort of thing, like you said about the habits. So I did use the Atomic Habits to create that. My assumption is that, is it just a brain dump of everything that's in your head, or is there some structure to it?
It's a brain dump.
Perfect. I think I like the sound of it.
Yeah, for me, it's a brain dump. When I first started writing, there's this book that I wrote that's called Do Morning Pages.
Okay,
where
write that down.
you will just You just sit down and just write what's in your head and just get it out. And then at the end of it, you'd set an intention for the day. Like, my intention is to have a great day. My intention was to have a great meeting with Amantha. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't, I know many people talk about having a structure, and I just like to write what's coming into my head and just let that out. You know, I mean, I've been journaling for years now. And so I just allow it to flow. I don't meditate as much as I should, because I actually know that helps even more. You know.
Can I give you a top share?
Go for it.
We've shared loads already today. Top share. Meditation is just journaling without a pen.
Oh, I was getting my pen out to write something down.
No, seriously. And especially guided meditation. I love the Calm app. 10 minutes. And I think the lead author on that is Tamara Levitt. She owns the Calm app. She'll, like this morning for me, was about compass and direction, and actually about deciding what your direction is in the morning before the day takes hold and the direction is decided for you. Mm-hmm. So the intention is that. And so I come back to that every day, and that's helping me. So there's some soundbite in amongst as well. And this is the thing I'm super passionate about. Meditation turns off your stress response. So it's 2 for the price of 1.
Okay, it turns off your stress response.
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yes, indeed. And that's all
really
done. Yeah, it turns off your stress response by stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system. In short, your rest and digest system switches on and your fight and flight system switches off. And meditation, and it's all about the rise and fall of your diaphragm.
Interesting.
So meditation is the signal to your brain to rest and digest. And that is what floods your body with those calming GABA neurotransmitters.
How long do you do it for?
10 minutes minimum. I'm working my way up to an hour.
Okay.
But it's good. If I don't have time, it's the first thing I do before I get out of bed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I hear my husband put the cup of tea on the side.
Okay.
and then I come to.
All right, it's all over now. Okay.
All over.
Okay.
But honestly, and I actually do webinars for organizations whereby we make that link. And I just wish so many more people could understand that link between meditation is not woo-woo, it is science-based. They've done MRI scans, haven't they? And they've shown that actually with less than 5 minutes meditation every day, you change the structure of your brain.
Okay.
Which is the equivalent, if you did 10 press-ups, that would change the muscle tone.
Yeah.
Meditating changes the muscle tone of your brain and creates new neural pathways. They've shown that it reduces the incidence of dementia, Alzheimer's. So it's good. But I would imagine when you're journaling, you're probably recreating the same thing, Morton, because you're probably in quite a relaxed state. You're just in flow. And anything that gets your belly breathing does the same thing.
Right, but I'm going to try that some more.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to try journaling. I love that idea because I think it's just different tools for doing the same thing, actually.
Yeah, it is actually. It is very much so.
Right, I've got another question for you.
Okay.
So let's think about the big wide world. What a time to do this interview after the news at the weekend. There is some hope in the world.
There is some hope.
A new president in the United States of America, a new female, Asian, African vice president. Whoop, whoop. But it's only just the beginning. So when we look at the world and how broken it is and maybe how much work there is to do, what do you think the world needs more of and why?
Actually, what I think the world needs more of has to start internally. And we as individuals need to be less judgmental. If people judged each other less, you'd have less opinions, you'd cause less pain. Quite often, things happen because you have an opinion which actually is not really a healthy opinion of someone else. So I think the world needs more acceptance and less judgment. It's not the easiest thing to do. Yeah. And that in itself has been a journey that I myself have been on, which is to judge people less and just accept them for what they are and where they are and where they are, you know what I mean, and what they're doing. So that's what I think, less judgment.
I agree completely. And in fact, one of our other guests, Danny Sardu, almost said word for word what you just said.
Oh my goodness, did he?
Yeah,
okay.
He absolutely did. And I think there's something in that, isn't it? Because actually, if we're saying it, it's probably because we're seeing it.
Yeah.
And I do think it's about waking up inside of yourself, isn't it? And realizing that you have the power in you to evoke change in yourself, and that change in others. But I think it's a courage thing, isn't it? It's a confidence thing. Everything you've talked about, Morton, and that you are about, you know, when you know yourself, you stop criticizing and pointing the finger at others, because you know your own strengths and weaknesses.
And yeah, absolutely, you do. And you're much more accepting of others, because, as you would know from your work and our work, which is, if I'm noticing a behavior in Amantha, it's quite likely I have it myself, but I'm denying the fact that I have it. Yeah. So therefore, I'm actually judging me, but I'm hiding because I'm projecting it onto you. Yeah. Yes. And quite often it's this thing around projection. So it's not the easiest thing to do, because we always have an opinion about what you think someone else should do or shouldn't do. And it takes courage, I think, to not judge. So I can meet a client and I can have an opinion about them, and in that way, it impacts the way I interact with them because I'm judging them. Yes. I can meet a client and they may behave in a certain way, and I have an opinion which impacts the questions I ask. You know, and it all stems to me from some form of judgment. Yeah, and that's been my experience. And it's really trying to have an open book of thinking, okay, I'm as bad as you are and you're as bad as I am. To some extent. Yeah. You know, and so let's see how we can go from there. And that's what I aspire to doing. And that's what I think the world needs more of. You know, when you think of America, judgment impacts our beliefs, or our beliefs actually goes the other way around. Our beliefs impacts our judgment, and then we take positions, and then we make decisions, and da-di-da-di-da. Yeah. And that happens in work as well. And it happens because, quick story, I had a client several years ago, and they had an opportunity to work with a big entertainment company, but their perception of that company affected their ability to interact with them. They judged themselves as being inferior. Oh my God, do they want to work with us? Ooh, you know, and so that affected how they interact with it. They were judging the company in a way that they didn't need to. And that comes from your own sense of self-worth and self-belief. When you feel that you're worthy, when you feel that you're valuable, when you feel confident enough, you know, then you won't need to judge anyone else. You accept them because you accept yourself. That's my view.
Oh, I love that. That's, yes, is my response to that. Completely. Okay. I agree. And that's what makes, when we show up, it's a double win, isn't it? Yeah. Because we're constantly and how we show up, because we're constantly reminding ourselves, am I judging? Am I steering this in a way that is inappropriate? And you're constantly challenging those concepts yourself. And it is brilliant. But yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think it's going to be interesting times.
Indeed.
Interesting times. So when we talk about interesting times, what will the next 10 years be like for you, Morton? What do you see in your timeline, to use an NLP type
timeline?
What do you see in your timeline?
Time or through time?
You're already on lunchtime. You're already on lunchtime. I mean, the video. Yes, please. My goodness, you absolutely should do a series. That would be fantastic.
It would. Yeah. I'll think about that. What do I see? I see myself, actually, I'm in the process of sketching in my head my book, a book or two, yeah,
Yes,
on
yes,
value. I'm going to write it about, because I think that value comes into play in our business and our personal lives, okay? And my book will be around personal relationships and value, because if you don't have boundaries in your personal relationships, then you don't feel worthy, yeah? Personal relationships, business relationships, and value, because if you don't do that, you have an equal relationship with your client. You're doing more, they're taking advantage of you. So my book will be around that, knowing your value and really understanding the difference that you make. So in the next 10 years, developing my consulting executive coaching practice to such a level that it is just call Morton. He's the man to get in touch with.
yeah, absolutely.
Call more. Yeah.
Your name is so cool. Anyway, can I ask? Actually, I should have asked this question at the top. Where does the name Morton come from? I love it.
Good question. My brother.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
He decided to call me Morton, but apparently it's a Norwegian name.
Yes.
Yes, somewhere from there. I don't know why he gave it to me, but I'm thankful, because initially I hated it as a boy, and then eventually I thought, oh, it's quite unique. I think the Bible says a man is his name, or something like that.
Yeah, and
yeah.
And the only other famous Morton I know is Morton Harket from Our
Exactly. Yeah. And the Morton Football Club in Scotland.
Oh, there's a third one then. There we go.
Yeah, there's a few more.
I'm lucky enough to know this Morton now.
Absolutely.
And so Morton, can you believe that is us done?
Oh my goodness, that's been wonderful.
It's come round quickly to an end, as it always does in this time. You know, we're always surprised, all my guests and me. I'm always surprised every week I do this. So how quickly it comes to an end. So can I say, from me to you, thank you so much for being my guest today. I've learned so much from you, and actually experiencing you outside of your LinkedIn post has just been everything I hoped it would be. So tell people, so that they can know and be in touch with you, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
The best way to get in contact with me is on the LinkedIn platform. If you look me up. I have a website as well, which is mortonpatterson.com. You can go there and you could download my ebook on 5 ways of finding your value. You could also get that on LinkedIn. But as LinkedIn is really quite the massive platform it is at the minute, find me on LinkedIn or on my website.
And that is brilliant. And honestly, please check out Morton's Pace, because if you were unsure about the power of value, he will confirm to you how important it is. So thank you so much for being my guest, and let's do this again sometime, especially when you've got that book coming out. That will be fantastic.
You'll be the first to know. Okay.
Thanks so much, Morton. Bye for now.
So wonderful. Thank you.